violence.
Ain't no, you ain't snitching. No.
I ain't never in my life told. You know, I'm the mother. When people ask me if I know who killed Tupac, and not saying Tupac dead or alive, but I'm saying if they ask me if I know who killed Tupac, I'm the said, hey, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
I don't get down like that. You'll have a 90 motherfucker walk down the street and said Suge Knight killed Tupac. When everybody know off the top, I ain't the killed Tupac, I'm the protected Tupac.
Yeah.
But at the same time, bitch ass Puffy can give him a star, and every rat in the world said he didn't want to kill Tupac.
Yep.
Or had him shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you notice, it was a rat on television saying he the one did the shooting, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, right?
Right.
If you think about it, right?
Right.
Why you think nobody been arrested if they said they the one killed Tupac?
Even before the first word was spoken, the courtroom crackled with tension. Everyone knew something big was coming, but no one expected the energy to shift so dramatically until Marion's Suge Knight popped up on the screen. The grainy video feed from his prison cell only added to the weight of the moment. There he was, the infamous ex-CEO of Death Row Records, serving out a long sentence, older and grayer, but still carrying that intimidating presence. And he wasn't there to talk about old rap beefs. He came with a bombshell, a claim that Sean Diddy Combs was behind the 1996 murder of Tupac Shakur. All eyes shifted to Diddy, seated at the defense table, already weathering intense scrutiny from the ongoing sex trafficking and racketeering case. You could see him tighten up the moment Suge appeared. And then, Suge started talking. He didn't just rehash the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry like a history lesson, he painted a picture of war. Real war. According to him, the animosity between Death Row and Bad Boy wasn't just industry competition, it was personal, brutal, and dangerous. And at the center of it all, he claimed, was Diddy. Suge said the mid-90s were full of threats, whispers, and warnings. He and Tupac were repeatedly told that Bad Boy affiliates were planning something deadly. He recalled the rising tensions leading up to that fateful night, September 7, 1996, when Tupac was shot in Las Vegas. Earlier that evening, Pac had gotten into a fight with Orlando Anderson, a Southside Compton Crip at the MGM Grand. Suge said that moment only accelerated what was already in motion. Then came the gut punch. Suge claimed he had intel from credible sources that Diddy had offered $1 million bounty to have Tupac killed. And according to Suge, that wasn't just street talk or some twisted rumor. He said he heard it straight from people deep in the criminal world. He even went as far as to say Diddy didn't just want Pac gone, there was also a price on his head.
Now, it was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
When prosecutors asked why he hadn't come forward sooner, Suge just laughed. "You think the Vegas police were interested in what I had to say?" he said, shaking his head. "They were never going to believe someone like me pointing the finger at someone like Puff." He accused Diddy of using his fame and money to dodge consequences and manipulate the original investigation. According to Suge, this wasn't justice, it was a cover-up. When the prosecution brought up Biggie Smalls' murder, which happened 6 months later, Suge didn't hesitate. He suggested Biggie's death was used to feed the narrative of a coast-to-coast war, but in reality, it may have been silencing someone who knew too much. Finally, the prosecutor asked the big question, was it Suge Knight's sworn belief that Diddy paid to have Tupac killed? Suge didn't blink. He leaned into the camera and delivered his answer with cold, unwavering certainty. $1 million. Puff put it out there. He's responsible for Pac's death. Period. Suge Knight's accusation hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Raw, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The tension that had already gripped the room tightened even further. Though he didn't name names, Suge pointed directly at Diddy's camp, saying people from the mogul's inner circle were spotted in Vegas during the infamous Tyson fight weekend, the same weekend Tupac was gunned down. According to Suge, these guys weren't there for the boxing. They had no legit reason to be in town. He claimed that their presence was tied to something far more sinister, a so-called business proposition, a carefully planned hit with $1 million price tag on Tupac's life. He alleged that the plot had been brewing for months. In Suge's eyes, this wasn't just about rivalry, it was about survival and control. He painted Diddy as a man threatened by Tupac's rising influence, someone who couldn't handle being outshined, out-hustled, or out-loved by the fans. According to Suge, Tupac wasn't just a problem. He was a threat that had to be removed. And Diddy, he claimed, took the nuclear option, put a bounty on him. Suge went on to explain why he never reported this to the cops. When he and Tupac were rushed to the hospital after the shooting, he said he already knew talking to the police was pointless. In his words, they weren't interested in the truth. To him, the investigation was a smokescreen, just enough effort to make it look like they cared, but never enough to actually get to the bottom of it. And why? Because Diddy, with his fame, fortune, and connections, could sway things in his favor. The prosecution seized on this, suggesting that Diddy had a long track record of using money and power to stay untouchable. Then they shifted gears to Biggie's death, 6 months after Tupac's. Was it revenge? A continuation of the so-called rap war? Suge shook his head. That's what the public was meant to believe, he said. The whole East Coast versus West Coast feud was the perfect distraction. But in reality, Suge suggested Biggie knew too much, maybe about the hit on Tupac, and that knowledge made him a liability. According to Suge, Biggie's murder wasn't just retaliation. It was cleanup. Then came the final damning moment. The prosecutor asked again, did he truly believe Diddy ordered the hit on Tupac? Suge looked dead into the camera, no hesitation, no drama, just stone-cold certainty. $1 million. Puff put the bounty out. He's responsible for Pac and me. The courtroom erupted. Jurors shifted uncomfortably, reporters' keyboards clattered like machine guns. Murmurs buzzed through the gallery. Diddy sat stiffly at the defense table, shaking his head, lips moving in a furious whisper to his lawyers. He was clearly rattled, eyes wide, jaw clenched, the polished calm slipping. Outside the courthouse, the media exploded. Headlines screamed, Suge Knight accuses Diddy of ordering Tupac's murder. His words were now part of the official record, and no one could unhear them. Despite Suge Knight's long rap sheet and personal feud with Sean Diddy Combs, the prosecution clearly knew what they were doing by putting him on the stand. It was a gamble, no doubt, but a calculated one. The $1 million bounty rumor had floated around the hip-hop world for decades. It was the stuff of barbershop debates, late-night interviews, and underground whispers. But now, with Knight saying it all under oath in a federal courtroom, it wasn't just street talk anymore. It was sworn testimony. And with that, the prosecution began to shape a bigger picture. They weren't painting Diddy as someone who recently took a wrong turn. They were alleging he'd been playing a dangerous game from the very beginning. To them, this wasn't just about one crime. It was a legacy of control, fear, and power plays. Knight's claims, especially the ones about Diddy's people being in Vegas for the hit, fit into that narrative like puzzle pieces falling into place. Sure, Knight had his own motives. The defense wasted no time pointing that out, calling him bitter, washed up, and looking to stay relevant. But Knight's version of events, his claim that even street-level sources confirmed the bounty felt disturbingly plausible. There was something in the way he laid it out that made people pause. It wasn't wild ranting. It was detailed, confident, and delivered with a kind of eerie calm. For Diddy, the fallout went far beyond the legal threats. It hit at the heart of his legacy. Suge had just dragged one of the darkest, most talked-about chapters in hip-hop history back into the spotlight at the worst possible time. Diddy was already under federal investigation for sex trafficking. Now, prosecutors were drawing a line between the man accused of masterminding a murder in 1996 and the one being accused today of abuse and manipulation. Different charges, same ruthless mindset, and then came the twist that made jaws drop. Knight's belief that Biggie Smalls wasn't just a victim of East versus West Coast tensions, but maybe a casualty of silence. According to Suge, Biggie might have known too much about what really went down with Tupac. And if that were true, his death wasn't just revenge, it was a cover-up. The prosecution didn't claim to have the smoking gun on Biggie's murder, but they didn't need to. Just raising the possibility added another layer of suspicion, another reason for the jury, and the public to question everything they thought they knew about Diddy. By now, the courtroom felt like it was bursting at the seams. The jury sat wide-eyed, trying to keep track of the emotional weight of it all, years of speculation, betrayal, and violence crashing into the present moment. Suge Knight had just taken decades of hip-hop myth and put it under the microscope of federal law. And the story wasn't over yet. The prosecution didn't bring Suge Knight to the stand to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Sean Diddy Combs ordered Tupac's murder. They brought him to shift the way the jury saw Diddy, to peel back the layers of glitz, success, and celebrity, and expose something much darker underneath. Knight didn't just say Diddy was jealous or paranoid. He painted him as a man so desperate to protect his place in the spotlight that he'd consider putting $1 million hit on a rival. It wasn't about proving every word. It was about changing the lens through which the jury viewed every other accusation. And in that courtroom, where every glance and twitch matters, all eyes were on Diddy as Knight's words echoed. His frustration was impossible to hide. He clenched his jaw, muttered furiously to his lawyers, and locked eyes with the screen as Suge testified remotely. For a man who built his career on control, controlling his image, his artists, his empire, he looked like someone unraveling. The tension in the room thickened with every minute of Knight's testimony. What made Suge's story even more explosive wasn't just the Tupac allegation, it was his claim that he too had a target on his back. This wasn't just old beef. According to Knight, this was a matter of life and death. He wasn't just naming names, he was speaking as a survivor. That personal angle made the jury sit up straighter. Suddenly, this wasn't just about revenge or ego. It was about staying alive in a game where power meant everything. By the time Knight finished, Diddy wasn't just fighting today's allegations. He was staring down a version of himself that prosecutors were all too happy to promote. Not just a successful businessman who lost his way, but someone who may have built his success on violence and fear from the very beginning. And Suge Knight, he didn't come off like the ruthless exec people remembered. He was more like a haunted narrator, bringing decades of whispers and rumors into the bright, unforgiving light of the courtroom. Whether or not it helps convict Diddy on the sex trafficking charges, the damage to his reputation was immediate. Suge had cracked open the vault of hip-hop's most painful chapter and placed Diddy squarely in the center. The bigger problem for Diddy now wasn't just disproving each accusation, it was escaping the larger story being told. One of abuse, one of manipulation, one where Kid Cudi's house explosion, Gene Deal's insider claims, and now Knight's murder allegations weren't isolated events but chapters in the same brutal saga. The prosecution wanted the jury to believe Diddy didn't just act out of impulse, he operated with a cold, calculating mindset that spanned decades. For the jury, this wasn't just about crime, it was about history, about legacy, about whether the man once seen as a hip-hop mogul was actually something far more dangerous all along.